Good morning, Austin, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. My name is Ray Blevins. My co-host, Jeff D.
Hi, folks.
And this week's guest, Rohan Wynar.
Thank you for inviting me back.
Yes, yeah. If you're a regular viewer of the show, you'll recognize his face. He's been here a couple times. We definitely enjoy it. We like starting out with news of Atheist Community Austin. We always meet down at the Hot Jumbo Bakery, which is down at West 5th and Lavaca, and that's free and open to the public. Anyone who wants to come down and meet fellow atheists, come on down. First Sunday, excuse me. First Sunday of every month, we have our guest speaker series, which goes on at Furs at North Cross Mall. And we're just discussing here. I've lost track of who our next guest speaker is, but I just want to remind you that we do that on the first Sunday of every month. This month, we're actually doing our quarterly blood drive. We're having that October 30th. So any healthy atheists out there want to come down and give blood, we'd really appreciate it.
Christian Scientists are welcome.
Yeah, there you go.
If you need a little bit of deprogramming from your Christian Science fanaticism, come down to the blood drive. Help out.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people who don't believe what you do who want your blood.
Thank you, Ron.
That's a strange way of putting it.
Well, maybe we'll dress up as Christian Sciences and we'll go in there. Yeah. But anyway, so at this point we'd like to go on some news here, but this particular news article here, News of the Weird from the XL, really caught my eye because this gives, I think, an indication of some of the stuff we're going to be running into when the year 2000 comes here. This is stuff that just happened on our last eclipse. During the August 11th eclipse, a baby born during the blackout was killed by its 31-year-old mother who feared it was thus cursed. That was in Romania. Abdul Nasser Noradin was charged with killing his wife because she was too fascinated with the eclipse to make him a cup of tea. This was in Egypt. A police superintendent released 3 prisoners under the assumption that the eclipse meant the world was ending, and that was in Brazil. See, and that was just the eclipse. So when 1999 ends here, I'm sure we're going to see a whole page of the News of the Weird.
And it won't be from Egypt, and it won't be from some far-off, weird, twisted little section of India that nobody knows the name of. It'll be from, like, New York City, and it'll be from Pensacola, Florida, and it'll be from Bible Belt America. A bunch of idiot people selling their goods, cutting off their fingers, doing all these things that stupid people do.
Cutting off their fingers?
They'll cut off their fingers. These people are about as dumb can possibly be. And, you know, in anticipation of the arrival of the Antichrist, people will self-fulfill themselves a year 2000 disaster that will just be unlike anything anybody's ever seen.
But you already have cultists in Jerusalem scheming to start violence in order to trigger Armageddon, which dovetails nicely into my weekly Doomsday report.
There you go, Jeff.
We got 2 predictions coming up for October 11th to 12th. That's this coming Monday and Tuesday, tomorrow and the next day. According to Michael Rood, those dates mark the end of the 30 days of preparation for the Day of the Lord. So I guess the 13th would be the Day of the Lord, I guess. It's hard to tell. We were supposed to have already seen 30 days of bloodshed, plagues, and all manner of pestilence, but I guess we all must have slept through it. Also scheduled for October 11th to 12th, a guy going by the internet handle Escape666 has already postponed the deadline for Nostradamus' Great King of Terror twice. Originally scheduled for August, this Nostrophile pushed the deadline back to September when the Great King was a no-show. When September also came and went, he dredged up an excuse to push it back to October. And this is... wait a minute. I think I got my days confused. Anyway,
so does he.
October 11th to 12th is the third and hopefully final deadline for the mysterious Great King of Terror. Also predicted for sometime in October, and speaking of kooks around the world, Lee Jang-rim, leader of the Korean Christian Doomsday cult Mission for the Coming Days, also known as the Tammy Church, originally predicted that the rapture would occur on September 28, 1992. Lee was convicted of fraud after his prophecy failed. Lee's cult was part of the larger Hayu-go, or Rapture movement, which took Korea by storm in 1992. Apparently, there are still some active members of Hayu-go, and these Tammy sect proponents predict the demise of the Earth sometime this month. So we'll all be on the lookout.
I love the Chinese translation of rapture. How you go?
How you go? How you go?
How you go? You go rapture?
I hadn't caught that. Interesting.
Yes.
I don't know.
I didn't know that.
I'll tell you, when I spent some time in Korea, and one thing I remember very vividly is that when these people fall for a cult, they fall extremely hard and in large numbers. And in the United States, basically, you can't get a cult nationwide over 10,000 unless you have some kind of deep and profound pseudoscientific pitch, meaning you're like Scientology promises superpowers if you develop their skills, etc. But in Korea, it's easy. It's much easier to do this because who knows why. But I just remember a mass marriage by this Reverend Sun Young Moon in Seoul. I remember busloads of people coming into Seoul, women. Busloads of women, and then I remember busloads of men arriving. They stayed in different hotels, and then the next day I came back from work, and the busloads came back, and they were paired up in wedding outfits. And
had they ever met before?
They had never met before.
And the Reverend actually picked out the partners.
The way it worked is everybody put in their sort of portfolio, and the Reverend put everything up on the walls in his church, and he walked by, and he just was, inspired by the power of God and connected people together. And well, the interesting thing, before you go cuckoo on this, is that these marriages are not altogether unsuccessful, which sort of supports the notion that people can live together if they really want to, right? And it's an interesting point, but the fact is they still revere this man as some kind of divinely inspired mating pair, and Korea is loaded with stuff like that.
Now, is sleeping with his own female worshippers one of the charges against Sun Young Moon?
Well, I don't know the current status of a lot of what's happening. He's had a lot of accusations against him.
Okay. I was just wondering if he was like taking the cream of the crop and setting them aside for his own special purposes.
So are these predictions? Are these just a few lunatic fringe Christians?
There are entire web pages devoted to reporting on these doomsday predictions when they come up.
I see.
And they've got pages that list all the historical ones up to the point when their page started, and then they just browse the news groups and keep their eyes open for apocalyptic predictions.
I see.
And their web pages list the name of the guy that made the prediction. There's a link to that guy's email address. If he has a web page, or if the outfit is a web page, there's links to that.
Oh.
It's well documented.
Great.
And we've invited people to make predictions here on have recorded predictions here on our show too, and nobody's taken us up on that one yet.
What's really amusing is, at least on one of those two sites that I'm familiar with, it's all in a big table, and there's one column that indicates how successful the prediction was, and it's like failed. But they keep doing it. Amazing.
Just a reminder, everyone, that we are coming at you live October 10th, and that is our telephone number. We'll be taking your questions here shortly. But Jeff has more news.
I got more kooky religion from around the world.
All right.
Celebration.
Is there any other kind?
Well, it's not interesting when it's not kooky.
Good point.
Sacrifices mar Turkish animal hospital opening. Celebrations to mark the opening of a Turkish veterinary hospital on World Animal Day took an unfortunate twist when workers sacrificed a ram and calf to honor a visiting minister. I think it's a political minister, not a religious minister. Yeah, State Minister Yekselyalova intervened to stop a second ram having its throat cut at the entrance to the hospital in the western port city of Izmir on Monday, local newspapers said. On a day like this, especially at the opening of an animal hospital, scenes like that were really not appropriate, Yalova was quoted as saying.
Oh, I thought you guys...
Do we have some animal noises? That'd be appropriate. Anyway, evangelical pastor leaves wife for man. One of Britain's best-known evangelical preachers has left his wife and 3 children to set up home with another man. The decision by Roy Clements, pastor of Eden Baptist Church in Cambridge for 20 years, to end his marriage to pursue a relationship with someone of the same sex has left the world of evangelical Christianity in shock. Dr. Clements, 53, is known worldwide as a speaker and preacher on the Evangelical Christian Conference circuit. He has written several books and sermons outlining his fundamentalist view of Scripture and has a Billy Graham-like style of following in evangelical circles. Only in February, he told 6,000 men in Australia about the importance of purity, truth, and Christ-like love. What would Jesus do? Dr. Clement's resignation as pastor of his church and as a member of the management team of the Evangelical Alliance, an umbrella body which represents more than 1 million Christians across 30 denominations, is being seen as a heavy blow to the evangelical wing of the church. In its recent publication, Faith, Hope, and Homosexuality, and the greatest of these apparently is... the Alliance unequivocally condemned homosexual relationships. The Alliance came out against moves to ordain practicing homosexuals and said that church services to bless homosexual marriages would be unbiblical.
Become a man that God desires, because once you become a man that God desires, it makes it easier to desire other men.
All right, good point, good point. I'm sure that was not taken out of context anyway. We don't do that on the Atheist Experience.
That wasn't a quote from Dr. Clemens, I'm sure. That was
no, I don't know who that was.
We don't know who that was, but it was very appropriate.
A spokesman for the Alliance said that Dr. Clemens had resigned after the breakup of his marriage, which was related to his celibate friendship with another man. Dr. Clemens has insisted that the relationship is celibate.
They're just roommates.
They're just good friends. Yeah, I think. Don't know anybody else who's ever left his wife to go live with his good friend.
Yes.
Yesterday at the Modern Church, which adjoins a shopping center, the doors were locked and no one was prepared to discuss the scandal. It is the second high-profile marriage to have broken up in Britain within a week. Religious marriage, that is. 2 days ago, it was disclosed that the Bishop of Hull's wife had left him and their 4 children to live with a vicar in the West Country. Conservative evangelicals consider practicing homosexuality to be among the most serious of sins. Dr. Clement's decision has come at a key period in the debate over the issue, which is causing divisions in the churches. The loss of such an important figure from the conservative wing is seen as a coup for the lesbian and homosexual Christian lobby. In a sermon last year entitled "Coping with Failure," Dr. Clements defended President Clinton and condemned a prurient curiosity in the Lewinsky affair. He said, "Those who go looking for skeletons in cupboards will inevitably find them. There is undoubtedly a lot of undiscovered sin lurking in the corners of this murky world."
Amen.
Amen. Dr. Clements' friend is understood to be in his mid-20s. In correspondence, Dr. Clements referred to him as C. The couple are thought to have moved to northern England. Well, we wish them well, and hope that this leads to a softening of that hardline attitude telling Baptists that they ought to stick their noses into other people's business. New Mexico teachers no longer must teach creationism. Some good news for a change.
Yeah.
Santa Fe, New Mexico. Teachers in New Mexico no longer have to teach creationism along with the theory of evolution in their classrooms. In a 14-to-1 vote on Friday, the board decided against requiring instruction on creationism or other alternative theories about how life forms came to be.
They deserve an applause.
Well, that's poorly worded now. And that was the issue that John Coons made. These are not alternative theories on how life came to be.
They're not theories at all.
They're non-scientific, mythical meanderings of people who have just never grown up. That's what it is.
Well, I got a quote here from these guys.
Oh, okay.
Let me see what they have to say. They might clarify themselves. You don't have to inform.
Sounded like they needed help.
The action we took clarifies, so there is no equivocation, that the leading theory of how Earth was created has to do with evolution. Board President, you're right. They're saying leading theory, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're still being
failing
soft
again.
Soft on creationism. That's all right, as long as they pass the right laws. Board President Flora Sanchez said, "Other ideas may be part of classroom discussion and inquiry, but the state does not require their teaching. Creationism is the belief that people and the earth were formed by a divine being. The theory of evolution, among other things, holds that man is the descendant of apes and other species." Prior to the vote, the state education standards included language that spoke of several theories of evolution and required teachers to present the evidence for and against evolution. Interest in the issue was rekindled this summer when the Kansas Board of Education passed new standards playing down the scientific importance of evolution. And earlier this month, the Kentucky Education Department deleted the word evolution from its standards, replacing it with less divisive change over time.
Which is not what it is. Evolution is not change over time.
It's not merely change over time. Sanchez acknowledged that the vote before the vote that there is a contingent of the public that doesn't like what we're doing. Most of that centers on the idea that this has something to do with religion. It does not.
Liar. It's just disgusting.
Again, as long as they pass, we'll have the discussion in a minute. Let me finish my last few sentences here. Critics of the proposal had argued that evolution is only a theory that shouldn't be taught as scientific fact. Board members and science teachers have agreed that the change wouldn't drastically alter what was being taught in New Mexico classrooms, but many teachers have said they welcome the clearer standards. I don't think there's a whole army out there trying to put creationism into school, said Bruce Miller, a science teacher at La Cuerva High School in Albuquerque, but with these changes, we might not have to fight that battle again. Okay. Wow. Go ahead.
There's not much more to say. That's very clear. Right?
I know. Well, they're
trying to elevate it to a theory, and it's not. And,
well, they're trying to keep from having to confront so much controversy by using language that is less objectionable to the people who they've just stiffed from their opportunity to get their views taught in school. The problem is that being kind to them in that way and using that language just encourages them.
It's just another example of how they trying to please that many people with one school system is not working.
But there should be no obligation to please these people. I mean, you can only teach science in public school. There's no alternative there. And these things that they want them to include are simply not science. They're not science in any wild, postmodern, liberal definition of the word. They're not science. Well, actually, there might be some postmodern version where they are science. But
that gives us a perfect lead-in to this weekend.
The big topic this week.
More, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
And I really want to get to this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll give
you time. But let's just make
sure. I thought you were done.
There was a protest in Santa Fe, Texas.
Yes, we do want to hear that.
On Friday, and it was covered in yesterday's Statesman. Can we get a close-up on this? Okay, I'll hold it up till you get the close-up. I went, and my wife went, and our friend Dennis went, and we protested along with representatives of numerous groups. What we were protesting was the practice of bringing a loudspeaker out onto the field and having students pray in public in front of a captive audience at a public sports event, a government-funded public sports event.
It'd be a good time to show the signs, too.
And we brought some signs with us that we made up. And if we can get pictures of those, that'd be good. Unfortunately, I didn't get my picture in the paper, which is it saddens me deeply. Yeah, that was one of the signs that I made. That the Matthew 6:5-6 is from the. Thank you, Ron. Is from the Sermon on the Mount. That's Jesus saying, "Don't be like the hypocrites who love to pray in public so they can be seen by other men." And it's funny when we said that to some of the people who were reacting rather negatively to our protest. They said, "Oh well, but it also says a bunch of other stuff in the Bible about how you should stand up for what you believe." But I thought that what they believed was what Jesus said. so I'm deeply confused by this.
I've prayed in the streets. I've prayed in the saloons. I've prayed in the toilets. It don't matter where, so long as you get that prayer.
Well, what do you have to say about that? Praying in the toilets, that's
interesting.
But that brings, I didn't bring in the article there, Leander, there's a state resolution forbidding prayer at school events.
Yeah.
Leander has voted to violate that resolution.
Yeah, and that was another thing. One of the main attitudes we got back from the people that were upset with our protest was, "Oh, why don't," like 8 or 9 people yelled to us during the course of the evening, "Why don't you go back where you came from?" To which we responded, "We're still in America." There's this attitude that as long as some little isolated group decides that they want to do something, even if what they've decided that they want to do violates the Constitution, that they have that right. And no, I'm sorry, this is the United States. We have a Constitution which establishes baseline rules for all the states. You can't go in your individual town and say, well, we're going to violate that because we just don't like it.
That's exactly what Leander's doing.
The last time we had people seriously expressing that attitude, we had a civil war. So that's incredibly dangerous.
I had a great opportunity to John Coons, who's a member of ACA, who's a high school or I guess a junior high teacher.
Right.
He, I talked to him in great detail the other day about how, when he first started teaching at some of these schools, there was this prevailing attitude that the religion in the school was Christian, and occasionally there would be prayers on the loudspeakers. There on the school, not the loudspeakers, the sort of the intercom system, the PA system in the schools. There would be memberships of all kinds of Bible clubs. There was a group, a fellowship of Christian athletes, actually organized in a school where there's really no meaningful athletic program. I mean, it's a junior high. They don't have like a team that travels all over the place. I mean, these kids can't be called athletes in a meaningful sense of the word, but that's not the point of this organization. It's to evangelize. And but the point is that that's what's going on in these little schools around here. It's a hidden battle because it's a school by school sort of situation.
Yeah.
And this is what John was describing. And these people, they probably, just as John says, they probably don't think Christianity is a religion. They think that it is the way the world is, and all those other people are experiencing these religions.
Good point.
And they really think that, hey, this public school should reflect what we want it to reflect, and we want it to reflect, you know, it's a no-brainer that this is government and this kind of thing should be completely separate. And certainly the notion of a captive audience should appeal to every American.
Yeah.
But this is completely invisible to these people.
But I'm glad to see that there's members of our group that are politically active out there, and we need to.
Yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't at it with you.
It was a long drive, and you know, jokingly, I would just like to recommend that in future, if these guys want to violate the Constitution, they should do it a little closer to Austin. That was a long drive. But we had people there from the ACA, Houstonians for Secular Humanism.
Oh, that's real long drive.
American Atheists, all kinds of groups, and 50 or so people in all.
I'm surprised that there aren't a lot more pure Christian groups that object to this kind of stuff.
We had Baptists there amongst us who object to combining church and state. They were protesting along with us. There were 2 girls from the school who were there with signs that said, "We're not here to protest prayer. We're here to protest I forget what word they used, but the reason why this is happening is there was a vote held at the school among the students,
right.
And the students voted that they should do this. This is a school with, you know, about 1,000 kids overall. About 72 of them voted in favor of this, and they just counted that was the majority of the ballots that came in.
That's
right. So that's how they decided it. It was like 100 votes came in, and 72 of them said, "Let's do it." So therefore the students decided that they should do this. No, the fact is the religious people that are influencing these kids are much more organized, and they made this happen. And there were students out there protesting against it because they knew that their voice was not really being heard.
That's great to hear. Okay, what I was leading into there, and thanks for bringing
go
that
ahead.
up.
I just can't cover that.
Great stories.
Yes. This weekend, the Whole Life Expo is going on. And Rohan Wynar has his forte is pseudoscience.
We like to talk a lot about pseudoscience when the Whole Life Expo comes. You know, I'm going to change the attitude now of the show here. And
sure.
I want to bring up, this is something where wacky fundamentalists and atheists should be in complete agreement, right? Here we can team up. You guys, we can get our signs, we can go out there and we can protest the Whole Life Expo, right? And we can do it together, and we can do it kind of consistently. Because one thing that religious fundamentalists, and in principle it should be all people who are theistic in nature, and atheists whose fundamental vision of the world is generated through scientific process, do have an agreement, is that there is an absolute truth, right? There is something out there that is the correct way of viewing the way the world works. And there is a slight difference, of course, that in the sense that scientists don't actually believe we know what that is, and atheists and theists, in fact, do believe that they know what that is. But the point is that what's going on at the Whole Life Expo is an opportunity where it's very clear that these people have no idea, no idea whatsoever about how the world works, and they're constantly proposing some new and absurd vision of not only physical reality some twisted version of science, but also they're trying to take all of these religions, real religions, and blend them all together in a mishmash, and they call it now spiritual teachings. And what I just wanted to introduce the concept of the Whole Life Expo today was, I wanted to just talk about how they're manipulating vocabulary to clean themselves up. It's like the mob in Las Vegas, right? When Las Vegas opened, mobsters moved in, and they felt very good in Vegas, right? Because Vegas was a place that took a mobster and made him clean again. You know, if you were running a gambling hall in New York, you could get arrested and go to jail for years. You could be put in Rahway Prison, New Jersey, in Rahway, and that would really stink. But you do the same thing in Vegas, and you become a hero of the community. You become a member of, like, the school board, right? You become the mayor, or you become a major businessman in the area. You join country clubs in the open. And the Whole Life Expo is creating a place where you can be a criminal, an intellectual criminal, a fraud, and a liar, and you go to the Whole Life Expo, and all of a sudden, everything that would have been before been basically enough to put you in jail for medical quackery, for consumer fraud, now all of a sudden you're clean again. And that's the essence of the Whole Life Expo. Let me give you a quick example of something that's, there's so much example of, a lot of the ACAs, a lot of the members of the ACA went, I haven't gone yet this year, I might go today or tomorrow, and they've brought back tons of stuff. Oh, look at this, as though this one is any worse than that one, right? You know? But one thing is interesting is the notion of psychics. I want to talk a little more about the religion, but the notion of psychics is, I mean, I think we all agree that psychics are frauds in some sense. They may be deluded into thinking they really have powers, or they are really frauds. I think most of them are really frauds. But the word psychic is bad vibes for everybody, and the Whole Life Expo knows that. And therefore, the Whole Life Expo has created a section for what they call intuitive readers. And these intuitive readers, they're not psychics, but they're intuitive readers. And if you go to the Whole Life Expo, in the upstairs, or at least it was last year, and you sit down at the intuitive reader, these intuitive readers have crystal balls, tarot cards, they have all the trappings of a psychic, but they're intuitive readers. They in fact call themselves psychics. But the point is that the Whole Life Expo knows if you call them what they are, they're going to make themselves dirty, because the word psychic now, even in the general public's mind, is a dirty word, as it should be, because they're frauds and they're liars, and we finally sort of figured that out. So how do you get around that and still get these guys in there and make them legitimate again? Well, you change their name and you call them intuitive readers. So there's tons of these people, right? I mean, and they themselves, again, call themselves psychics. They call themselves clairvoyants, astrologers. But some of them have picked up on this notion, and they say, no, I'm an intuitive. I'm an intuitive. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to become like that girl on Star Trek, you know? The counselor. No, the counselor. Remember the really cute girl that with the brunette hair who just knows what you're thinking. Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking about what her
Counselor Troy, right?
Now, what does intuitive mean?
Well, you know,
intuition is the idea that you just already sort of know stuff, right? That you have a feeling about stuff, and your feeling is accurate. That's what intuition is. Mm-hmm. So what they're saying is, we're the guys who we have no credentials or anything. We just tell you that we already know the answer to a bunch of stuff. That's their claim.
Well, I actually went, and I know exactly right. You go down the hall, and there's one section just for them. And the funny thing about this, there's not just tarot cards. There's Egyptian cards. There are dream cards. It's funny how many different decks of cards.
Runes.
And, yeah, they had the runes. Then they had the one guy that had a handful of different colored crystals that he was throwing out, and depending on where they landed on the circle. Anywhere from $15 to $25 a reading to it. It's
mind-boggling.
Yes.
So let me ask you this though. One legitimate question. I'm not really quite interested in diving into pseudoscience aspect of all this, but one legitimate question is, are all of these things consistent? I mean, can you really have all of these things simultaneously tapping into the special powers they claim? And the answer is you probably can make that claim, sure. But the point is that they've cleaned, these people are identical. As you said, there's nothing new about intuitive readers that isn't psychics. And I'd like all of our friends in the audience to be aware of that new twist on this scam.
No, you brought up a good, interesting point. I never thought about that. If one of them would claim that the vibrations from his crystal are screwing up my reading, and I don't want my booth next to them or something, it never occurred to me that.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Different readings might interfere with each other.
If you ever brought them and of course tested them,
yes,
they would fail the test. They would make some kind of claim like that, right? So. Why not? But they're all acting in harmony, and they're all acting with
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Are they still doing therapeutic touch?
Yes. Therapeutic touch is big
back in a big way?
It's as big as ever, and in fact...
there's several in there with different names. They don't call it that, though.
Well, sometimes they do. Therapeutic touch is actually a name... The whole notion of energy healing is a very broad-based field that has a lot of varieties from Qigong to therapeutic touch. Therapeutic touch is the name of energy healing when it's used by the nursing profession or people that associate themselves with the healthcare establishment, the real healthcare establishment, like hospitals. And now, when you start, it's the same essential thing when you talk about Reiki healing and when you talk about oral healing. It's essentially the same essence.
That's A-U-R-A, folks.
Yeah, it's essentially the same notion as therapeutic touch, but it's not, usually nurses don't make the claim that they're practicing that, although Reiki is becoming more and more popular. The point being that, yes, it's still there, and it's growing. I mean, people are really, really enamored by this model of reality where everybody and everything is emitting energy and it's bouncing back between us, and certain people can train to control and detect and sense and understand this energy and diagnose.
That's really sad because we had an incredibly clear indication that stuff is all nonsense. From a few years ago, this little third grader in her science fair project disproved it, and that experiment was repeated, and the results were published in the journal Science, and for a while it looked like the therapeutic touch people were in retreat. And I'm just reminded of this because you're talking about how they're renaming stuff. I remember seeing, for that period when they were sort of backing away and trying to reposition themselves to deal with the fact that they've just been shown to be a bunch of flakes and charlatans. I saw therapeutic touch for pets.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I'm thinking, well, that's brilliant, right? Because who's going to do an experiment on therapeutic touch where the dog says, no, I'm sorry, I really don't feel better.
Well, the essence of those experiments, of course, is whether or not a field is present and whether the therapist, the therapeuticist, can detect the presence of the field.
Don't touch that dial,
and
or my friend Swami Vito Ananda will come and break your aura.
Thanks, Arlo.
So that's one aspect of how they're doing this manipulation of terms. Let me give you another example of how they're manipulating language to make what is clearly and increasingly obvious fraud and lies clean again. And one is the notion of integrative medicine, which used to be known as alternative medicine, and it still is to a great degree known as alternative medicine.
Integrate.
But the problem with the word alternative medicine is it really exposed them to the greatest weakness of anything that is not evidence-based medicine, which is that it doesn't work. And if you use alternative medicine the way it's literally titled, as an alternative to evidence-based medicine, you will probably get sicker and sicker, and eventually you will die of an ear infection or something, which is not uncommon, and it's something I'll talk about in a moment when we talk about Christian Science.
All right.
But so they no longer use the word alternative medicine because it's dangerous. People die when they use alternatives to evidence-based medicine. So then they made a transition to the notion of complementary medicine, where, go get some real serious health care, but also give us a little money too. While you're spending thousands of dollars to have your leg put in a cast, spend another 20 on my aromatherapy, So it's become complementary. And now, that was very successful. That was very successful in cleaning up the fraud and the lies. And now they are going a step further because it was so powerful and so successful that they're now creating what they call integrative medicine. And integrative medicine is where you literally introduce this stuff into the healthcare system with the blessing of the modern healthcare system itself. And you actually make the claim that this stuff is an important part of the evidence-based treatment. So it's no longer complementary, it's no longer an option. You go to the hospital and it's right there, and it's assumed that it'll be part of, that's what they're aiming for. They're assuming that it's going to be part of, and they call this integrative medicine.
And their catchphrase for that is treat the whole person,
well, yeah.
right? Their actual symptoms and what's really wrong with them, and their credulity.
The HMOs take care of that.
As time goes, the question is how is this being handled as far as payment and money?
Because it's all about payment.
Well, that's right. That is the core question here. And it's not completely clear to me how they're handled. There's a lot of very credulous systems, healthcare systems out there that are, in fact, completely embracing chiropractic, for example, or introducing a huge amount of this alternative medicine into their payment system. But you pay for it. I mean, you end up paying for, I mean, just like if you increase the level of your coverage, you're going to pay for it in premiums. So the trick eventually will be to find a system that doesn't include all this nonsense, that in fact is manifest by lower premiums.
Interesting point. Yeah.
So it's hard. But this is another example of language being used, and I guess there's one other example of this, and it's an older one. This is as old as the New Age movement, which is since probably the 70s, the late 70s, I think, is when you can fairly say that this all stuff started, and that is the notion that being religious is a good thing. Being religious is a good thing because religious people are healthy, they have a sense of attachment to the universe and all this other nonsense that really isn't true and is certainly not necessarily exclusive of atheist philosophy. But it's not important what religion you're a member of. It's important to be spiritual, you see, but it's not necessarily important that you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu. You just have to be spiritual. And if you're really spiritual in your religion, then you will understand, this knowing, this all-seem knowing will come to you that all the world's religions are sort of the same, equivalent. They're different. In physics, we would say they're a different projection of the same vector, in a sense. And the notion is that it's all just spirituality that counts. Now, never mind, of course, that's as far as they go. They don't feel any compulsion to define spirituality. They don't even feel a compulsion to define what makes a legitimate religion. Can you be a spiritual Scientologist? Can you take gobs and gobs and gobs of money from somebody for auditing and you still be a spiritual person? They don't answer these questions. But, of course, at the Expo, they can't deal with the fact, they don't have the time to, and they don't want the hassle of dealing with the fact that the Raelian religion is 100% completely contradictory to Cavalry of Austin and to Urantia, who's also there, Scientology, and to Christian Science, which has a big presence at the Expo. And this contradiction is irrelevant if you use the umbrella term spirituality, but of course, as soon as you look the thinnest layer below this nonsense of definition, you realize this makes no sense whatsoever. Yes. No sense whatsoever. That's why you need to
understand this, my brother. I'm in a dimension that few people understand.
So,
but you were talking earlier, and I'm sure I did not see the Scientologists there.
Yeah,
this
they're
year.
not in the catalog this year. Interesting. I'm curious to know why they weren't there. They've always seemed to have a successful booth when I was there in the past. People pass by and they're always opening up a book and pointing out some little aphorism that L. Ron Hubbard said that says, like, the intermediate mass state of the consciousness program is very heavy. And this is supposed to be important.
But to remind everyone, this is coming to you live October 10th. That is our telephone number. We'll be taking questions. We'd love to hear from somebody that went to the Whole Life Expo themselves and some of their point of views. And I think this is our regular caller here, Mary here. Let's see. Mary?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Interesting subject.
Thank you.
It brought to mind something for me. I'm a Native American.
Just a second. You got your TV on?
We're getting feedback. Real low.
We're getting feedback here. We're fine-tuning it as we speak here. Sorry about that.
Okay, now I really turned it down. Can you hear me?
There you go. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Well, I'm listening to you through the phone, so I might miss something.
All right.
Okay, but I have to speak on this subject as a Native American because Native Americans are so spiritual, okay? I may be the first Native American atheist that ever existed.
I'll let you make that claim, but I have no way to verify that.
Well, I don't know any others.
Okay.
All the rest of them lean on their spirituality. But I'll tell you why that is, okay?
Okay.
I'm a mix of tribes, Texas tribes and 2 tribes from Mexico.
Right.
And the line was real blurry, so who knows what happened when. But 2 of the 2 tribes this side of the line are Comanche and Karankawa. And I know you've never heard of Karankawa because it was a real small tribe that lived on Matagorda Island and made their living fishing.
Right.
Okay, they're both genocided. They're gone, okay? The blood only survives as mixed blood. And the reason I'm an atheist is because if their spirituality was so powerful and so great and so true, how come they got wiped out?
Well, you see, the Jews are the chosen people. That's your problem, Mary.
Anyway, a friend of mine used to have a show right after you a long time ago.
All right.
And she gave me a tarot deck.
Right.
And she wanted me to use my Native American spirituality with it to, I guess, divine whatever you use a tarot for.
Right.
And I still have the tarot, but I don't have her as a friend anymore. And that's kind of strange to me that the gift survived and she didn't. I can't explain all of these things, and it's not a shameful thing to say I don't know.
Right.
Because I don't.
What things can't you explain? It seems like you explained everything very well to me. What was it that you can't explain?
The answers to everything, why we're here and where the universe came from and all of that stuff. I don't have a creation story that I believe. Random molecules is fine with me.
I see.
Okay? And that's all I really wanted to say.
Well,
Yeah.
we appreciate you being out there, Mary.
Thank you.
You know, it's a great story about Native Americans because a very, very good friend of mine, actually I'm the vice president of a small organization that goes to Peru. And in Peru, the president of this organization does linguistic work with newly contacted tribes of basically South American Indians, is what we would consider them, naively speaking.
Right.
And what is very true about all of the tribes, or I don't want to call them races because that's not exactly correct, but all of the groups down there, is that they're very ornery and they're very they're typically quite belligerent. And this is because those are the ones that made it, right? The people who weren't either got assimilated or killed, and it's exactly what it's a very obvious thing, right? I mean, that was what it took to make it in the big picture of. I mean, this is one of the theories, right? Is that there's a mean streak, and because the mean streak is a little bit more survivable under those conditions, and yeah, so
that's a good point.
What happened to their religion, right?
Yes.
But also the notion that Native Americans have some sort of innate spirituality kind of speaks to this notion of Luke Skywalker in the Force, right? He was born with it, right? He didn't even have to learn it. He was born with it, and I think that's sort of philosophically offensive in some way. It's got to be, right?
Right.
Well, I don't know.
Well, I see we have other callers here, and I think Larry was his name here. Let's see. Larry?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm not too familiar with atheists, but does that mean you deny or don't believe that Jesus walked the earth?
I personally don't. I cannot make a blanket statement for all atheists, because there's actually atheists out there that think that there was a person there that myth was based on. I think the historical evidence is so weak that I personally believe the person never existed.
Yeah, atheists are people that don't believe in any gods. Mm-hmm. Whether various figures from mythology had a basis in fact is a separate question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it.
That's it? Okay. Have a good day.
Yeah, maybe, you know, it's interesting. Terry Parker on his Libertarian show always starts the show out with a very strong definition of what it means to be libertarian. Apparently that caller could have benefited by such a thing.
Yes, I never thought about that.
Yeah, for anybody else that's listening, atheists are people that don't believe in any gods.
Any gods.
Any gods.
Yes. All right, let's go down to Preston.
Does that include Satan? Yes.
Hello?
Satan.
Good morning, Preston.
Hi, Preston.
Hey, good morning. It's kind of early, so I'm still waking up. But you're saying, like, do you believe in God, or, you know, like, I mean, where, like, we all divided up. Like, you don't believe in God, but do you believe in something higher?
No. Higher than a god?
Yeah, it's hard to come by, but I'm pretty close.
Okay. You know, I certainly believe in you. I believe in you, but I don't believe in
Okay, I'll buy that.
All right.
Yeah, we don't believe in any. Well, I'd say depends what you mean by higher beings. I mean, people better than me? Yeah, I've met them.
Okay.
And you may be
the idea that there might be something out there that's like better than all human beings. Well, that could be, but when we say we don't believe in any gods, we mean we don't believe in any cosmic, omnipotent, omniscient thingies that created the universe.
Or even leprechauns, any supernatural being, right?
I'm a leprechaun!
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
well, thanks for calling.
You have a great week. Let's go on down to...
We want your Lucky Charm.
Hello?
Louvay?
Yes.
Hi.
Good morning.
If there's no higher being, I was just wondering, who made us? Who made the first atom of this universe?
Why do you assume that is even a meaningful question? Why does it have to have been some guy?
Well, it doesn't have to be a guy. It could be, like you said, maybe it could be a higher being that has more...
No, the higher being would be a guy.
Or
why do you assume...
Well, not a being.
No,
why do you assume that there was a being that had to be responsible for that? Why couldn't that have just been, the way it was?
How else would the first atom be developed?
I don't know. Where would that being come from? You're not answering any questions by saying that it was a god.
In my worldview, there was matter is neither created or destroyed. It's here infinite, and I like the cycle that we're going from a big bang to a big crunch and back and forth, and it's the same amount of matter that's going, and it's always here and it always will exist. Well, but I'm a small percentage. I have a physics. The guy here would probably tell me something different.
There's a lot of theories. There's a lot of speculation. Yeah.
And I like that worldview myself. It answers a lot of questions, but it also leaves a lot of questions unanswered too.
Which is not in itself a flaw, right? I mean, the issue is whether or not it's possible to know the answer to all of these questions, and it's not clear that it is possible to know the answer to all these questions.
Yeah, well,
but just asking the question. I mean, it is an interesting question. Where did the first atom come from? I mean, no matter who you are, you have to confess to you. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
But the thing is being committed to the fact that it must be answerable is a mistake, because there's no real reason to think these are answerable questions.
I think what mankind is trying to do is trying to solve all these mysteries, trying to find an answer to everything, and if we can't understand the answer, or we can't understand the question, or whatever it is that we're trying to understand, we just deny it.
Well,
denying it.
It is right not to have any strong beliefs about stuff you don't understand.
Yeah, I
right?
Because
if it's a thing you don't understand, where do you get off having strong beliefs about it? Yeah. And that's the issue. We don't believe in gods, even though, I mean, I'll admit to you, sure, it's possible. I'm not omniscient. It's possible that there was some omniscient God that was around before the universe that made it all happen. But I have no knowledge of such a God. I have no understanding of what that God would be like. And there's no reason for me to seriously consider that. So I don't.
So I guess
and that means I don't believe in it.
That you have the right to deny that what you don't understand?
Yeah, but it's not just a right. I mean, it's really silly to have a strong belief about something you don't know anything about.
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of silly if someone, going out to some mountain dressed up in some kind of capes and sacrificing everything they have just for the sake of a...
I think it's silly to meet in great big buildings around town and sing songs together to some god that that they really don't know anything about.
Although meeting and singing songs for the sake of meeting and singing songs would be okay.
That would be fine. Yeah, but there's really no difference between going up on a mountain and doing some, crazy religious thing that's different from Christianity and doing crazy religious things that are Christianity. It's just the Christian things seem less weird because we're used to them.
Yeah, this is actually interesting because you want to say, Jeff was just reading a bunch of things this morning about particular people who are coming up with specific predictions about the rapture and the Antichrist. Right. And I don't see that as much different as the person who says, God, the Christian, the mainstream Christian, who goes to church and sits there and says, these people coming up with all these wacky predictions about the year 2000, that's ridiculous. They're extremists. They don't represent my religion at all, and it's unfair of the atheists to say that they do. But still believe in your heart that eventually someday the big 666 will come and the big rapture will come. It's just that these guys don't know, which is certainly true, but I don't see much of a distinction between those two either. I mean, sitting there and secretly believing it will happen and just rejecting the idea that it'll happen tomorrow is, they're almost just as bad, I think, you know.
Yeah, I guess not believing those, well, I think you guys are right in a way.
Okay.
I'll let y'all go.
But it is an interesting question.
Calling, and
you can't deny that it's an interesting question to speculate on cosmology and the origin of, I mean, science, we call it cosmology, and there are a lot of theories.
Yeah, the thing I was responding to was the way he phrased the question. You know, he didn't say, where did the first molecule come from? His question was, who made it? And that assumes a lot, that question. And that, you know, we may not be able to really know the answer to a lot of these questions, but that might be because some of the questions are just silly the way they're phrased. It doesn't help us in our quest to try to figure stuff out to prejudice the questions before we know enough about the question to know how to properly phrase it.
And I see we got more callers here. Just remind everyone, this is coming to you live October 10th, and we were talking about the Whole Life Expo. We got started.
That's fine.
Do you want to do more calls, or do you want to go back to?
Well, let's try one more.
Okay,
let's see.
One.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good morning.
How you doing? Listen, I wanted to figure out your guys' view on death.
Okay. I'm against it.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, I call myself sort of an agnostic, and sometimes, you know, when I consider the question of death, it kind of scares me because I sort of consider like a sleep without a dream without an end.
Yeah. Right.
And how do you reconcile that yourselves?
By trying to live the best life I can while I'm here and experience all I can here, and through diet and exercise, I'm going to be here as long as I possibly can and enjoy every minute I can.
But make no mistake about it, that is the, well, all right, there's a lot of atheists out there, and so if there is some way of believing in an afterlife that doesn't involve believing in gods, I'm sure some atheist somewhere has that belief. But let's put it this way, I think vast majority of atheists unambiguously will tell you that your depiction of death as an endless sleep without a dream is not too far from what the understanding of atheists is about an afterlife.
It's just not very appealing, is all.
No,
unfortunately.
Well,
and you know, I blurted out my sort of comical response at the beginning, but I'm only half joking about that. I think if you really don't like the prospect of one day being dead, then support medical research into life extension.
No, okay. I totally go. Okay, here's the second question, just real quick. How do you propose to bring a whole bunch of people into your line of thinking that are, you know, kind of backwards thinking, like this last caller or whatever else, by sort of polarizing through what seems like kind of a very right-wing sort of fanaticism that has to do with being an atheist?
Well, let's not slam the last caller. I mean, I he was asking these questions, and
no, I totally understand.
He was clearly using his brain.
What I'm trying to say is, I think that part of your proposal, what you're trying to do there, I hope, is to try to bring some of these guys into a more enlightened sort of viewpoint. And how do you propose to do that when you're like totally dissing them all the time, you know?
Well, we're not trying to diss them. We're trying to show the fallacy in their thinking.
No, I agree, but there's got to be
the purpose of this show is not to convert people to atheism. Okay. If that happens, great. If people listen to what we're saying and they decide that they agree with us, that's cool. I mean, we're happy about that. Right. But we're not here for that purpose. We are here to present our point of view so that people out there understand it. I mean, the vast majority of people in our society assume that atheist equals Satanist.
Right.
You know, and that's just not true. Or that lack of religious faith means that you are a unrepentant mass murderer, and that's also not true.
Yeah.
So our one function of the show is just to get people used to the fact that we exist and we're not a bunch of crazed lunatics. And the other thing is, there are a lot of atheists out there who are just isolated and don't even know there are other people that think about things the same way they do, and we'd like to reach them and let them know that they're not alone.
There's also the important point of making sure that we have a forum to, because there's a political agenda to atheism, which is to separate church and state, to keep the possibility of a twisted theocracy forever equal to zero. The probability of a theocracy happening in the United States, we want it to be zero. And this is a forum where we explain the silly, twisted inconsistencies that theism leads to. And we talk about, I haven't yet had a chance to break into the Christian Science thing about just denying basic medical care, about just the complete idiocy that...
I totally tend to agree. I mean, I've been something of an agnostic person since I was about 8 years old. So, and having grown up in a very religious household, it's been a little bit difficult for me to have to deal with that my whole life. I'm really grateful that you guys are out there doing this sort of thing.
Well, we want to invite you on down to the Hot Jumbo Bagelry. When we're done here, we head down there. That's on West 5th and Lavaca. And
cool, might take it out, man.
But some of us, I mean, but in a way, some of us are a little angry, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it that I have very little patience for creation myths getting into schools.
No, I totally agree. But I know my personal history. I've like turned a lot of people off by doing what you guys seem to be doing now, with a lot of people, and so I can see a lot. This is the only reason why I bring it up. You know?
Yeah. Well, Jesse Ventura said some things about organized religion. I mean, he says he's a Christian, but he did say some very pointed things about organized religion recently. And he still walks the street. He got yelled at, but he still walks the street. He still has his freedom and his life. I think that there's a lot of fear out there amongst atheists because of the hostility that is clearly there behind some of the attitudes about atheism. People are afraid that that means you can't, you can't cross that line. You got to stay furtive and silent. And I don't think that's true.
Well, I'm just really careful these days. While I don't tell people that I am an atheist, more often than not, I certainly don't advocate anything that has to do with organized religion. And people ask me about it, I kind of give them a sort of cagey little response to try to get out of the situation. But I really don't.
That's very common.
I don't get on my soapbox anymore.
We understand that.
Well, we appreciate your call.
All right, thanks a lot.
Great week. Let's try to do a couple calls here. Rock?
Hey, how you doing?
Real good.
This is Rock. Hi, Ron.
Oh, hi, Rock.
Oh, okay.
Libertarian.
Oh, Rock. Yes.
Are you still?
Great for calling.
Are you still the? Are you still leading up the Libertarian Party in Austin?
Yeah, I'm Travis County Chair. Y'all only got a minute on the air, or what?
No, we're not here till 9:30.
Oh, okay, great. Well, here's my thought. I heard you earlier talking about getting together with the theists to slam the pseudoscientific aspects of the whole Life Expo and so forth.
Yeah, because not all theists are anti-science. It's an extreme group that are anti-science. So
right, but let me point out something else too.
Sure.
Where let's say that 80% of that expo is pseudoscientific and/or crass commercialism, and should be disregarded by thinking people. It still has an interesting edge in that the spiritualism they push and the slant toward Buddhism and so forth does tend to wake a lot of people up who are trapped in organized religion thought modes to look at alternatives.
This is a good point, Rock, actually. It's one that I would tend to deny in the beginning, but I think the more you think about it, Rock's point is actually...
And it's a very libertarian point of view, yes.
Sure,
that's right. I mean, if you want to take an anti-authoritarian viewpoint, which is the worst evil? The organized religions who are pushing down dogma, an AMA supported by a government saying this has been studied by scientific evidence and therefore it's true, or people who are able to take a broader view and look at all the evidence for themselves.
And make their own educated choices.
Right.
Yeah, it's the educated part that...
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, is this a good forum for true education can be questioned, but there is some interesting stuff. For example, if we had had this discussion 5 years ago, we may have lumped in the acupuncturists with all these other people. But now that the acupuncture stuff has been studied more, there's actually now some evidence of some positive benefits from that practice. So you have to be a little careful.
I'll tell you what, Jeff. Why don't you? Well, let's hold off on the acupuncture comment. But I think just to make it clear, let me restate what Rock is saying here, which is that imagine that you were very committed to some particular religious position, then you go to the Whole Life Expo, and all of a sudden you see all these religions put out in front of you, right? Then just that very fact is going to force you to start thinking about other things, and that certainly is positive. However, and ultimately, I would hope that you would think about these other things and realize, no, they're all just as silly as each other, including the one I walked in here with. Now,
well, yeah, but look at it from the standpoint of the individual.
That's right. It's an improvement.
If the individual is in a mode of thinking where they are denying their own ability to think rationally about these things, to even think about them because they're so locked in, and they deny themselves the opportunity to even think about things like, is there a God, or who's really the authority on a particular issue. If they are in that level of denial, which a large part of our population, I think, is, then anything that acts as a spur to open up their thinking and actually cause some, hopefully, actual thinking in their brains is interesting. You have to agree.
Yeah, but the problem with the stuff at the Whole Life Expo is that there's an underlying anti-rationalist attitude underneath it. I mean, that anti-rationalism might be, in an organized church, that anti-rationalism might be institutionalized, but in the New Age movement, it's more of it's just a pervasive attitude. And the problem is that that was exactly Rohan's point, is these guys are taking all these different religions and just making a mush out of them, and for some reason they are just not noticing that they're blending things together that make absolutely no sense together, and that's because you can find actual quotes from these guys saying, rationalist thought is narrow, restrictive, repressive, and just bad, and the thing to do is just feel everything, and so they go into this feeling. Anything that feels good is okay, and there's a problem with that.
But for people who are completely out of touch with their own ability to feel their own thoughts, that's the attraction for these kind of people.
I prefer thinking thoughts rather than feeling thoughts.
That's actually helpful to get in a hold of their own feelings if they're unable to do so. So the interesting thing here is a lot of what you guys talk about as, okay, they changed the language to make it more acceptable and to avoid certain stigmas and so forth. Understand that's just the free market process working. Yeah. They're just trying to appeal to their customers better.
Yeah, Rock, think of my position on this in a libertarian world where, of course, this is legal. Remember, I've never, ever advocated turning this stuff illegal.
Right.
That's very important. I do think there has to be laws about fraud, which libertarians agree with.
Yes,
that's a violation of the and I think there is a lot of fraud here. However, making this whole thing illegal is not what I'm after. However, think of me this way: in a libertarian world, you have a completely free market, including a free market for me to open a shop that claims to be a private advisor and regulator, in a sense, where people pay me to give them a stamp of approval. So you could go to the Whole Life Expo and say, well, does this booth have Rohan Wynar's stamp of approval? And if it does, you say, well, I've paid Rohan to make this, help me go work through this, and I become one of those. That's how regulation is done in a libertarian society. It's done by private corporation. Right. So consider me like that, Rock. That's really the way I want to be perceived.
So, no, but you brought up an interesting point, because we're having our board meeting today, and I was wondering what kind of participation us as Atheist Community of Austin should do with something like, and I wasn't sure, if we should be in there or should we be outside protesting it, but I still feel
it's expensive to be in there, so unless you have a darn good product to sell that has good margins.
Good point.
Rock, let me talk to you about margins for a second. This is my favorite topic.
Sure.
This is the bioelectric shield. I'm going to plug the bioelectric shield now.
You can't.
Yeah, no, it's not on Access TV.
Oh, that's right.
But he's joking.
I'm not plugging. Right. This is not a plug. Not a plug. There is a product sold. Now listen to this, Rock. This object you can hold in your hand, right? And Rock knows, he's heard me go through this kind of thing before. This thing, to manufacture it, and Rock is a businessman, he knows about, in principle, about how you put together a business and make a manufactured product.
I sell software. The cost of manufacture is very low.
Well, imagine this thing is it's like a piece of jewelry you might buy in the Renaissance market by the university. I estimate it costs, when you're producing them in mass like these guys are, less than $10 to manufacture. Less than $10. How much are they selling for, Rock?
Well, if it's less than 100, they're probably not making any money.
Well, it's more than 100.
Oh, good.
Are you claiming that if you produce it for 10 and sell it for less than 100, it would be a...
The booths are that expensive down there, is what you're saying?
$400 if you share a booth.
Well, yeah, but this is just one side. I mean, these guys are national, right? The point is the profit margins on stuff sold at the Whole Life Expo, from vitamins to, God, homeopathic remedies, is so high, Rock. It's so high that it is blatantly shameful usury. And in my world, even in a libertarian society, this would be on the verge of fraud, at least. It certainly is in principle fraud. Whether it's legally fraud or not, I can't really say.
But is this a health-related sort of item?
Oh yeah, it's a useless device, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
you wear it because the software.
Let's look at how the cost structure works for sanctioned medicine in this country.
Oh well, okay. No, hey, Rock, I'd be the last person to start that debate because I'm not. I'm not claiming that, and I never make the claim that I don't talk about evidence-based medicine in detail because there the issues are very, very complicated, and you have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert on this stuff because it's just so far from reality. But the point being that these
they do take advantage of people who are uneducated and so forth, and they catch them in this moment where they're questioning themselves and their own identities and where they fit in the world.
Well, yeah, but that's the story of every cult, right?
Money off of that, that's for sure. And I can see that would be, you know, that in certain cases could be even fraudulent behavior and so forth. And that is something, of course, to be concerned about. I mean, when I've gone to the Whole Life Expo, I've walked out of there feeling like, ooh, this is kind of strange and icky and so forth.
I laughed.
But I think it does have a positive effect for some people. It opens people's eyes. For example, they had a speaker yesterday who was explaining to the group there, it was really well attended, about the fraud behind the Social Security system. Now, there's an example of a great authoritarian thing that's supposed to do wonderful things for everybody. It's this system where basically you're told you're investing your money for your retirement, but in fact it's just a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, well, you know, the claims are what's important, right? I mean, the claims, I mean, if the guy's making claims that he can't substantiate, then I have to worry about it.
But yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring this out because
that was great.
Because it is interesting to take, you know, to cut down a level and take a little deeper dive into what's really going on in this phenomena. And actually, the whole phenomena is, even though there are parts of it that are shamefully commercial and borderline fraudulent, ultimately it's an expression of getting away from organized this and that, which is interesting, and I think in some respects a positive thing for the community, for what it's worth.
I appreciate your input.
Hey, enjoy talking to you guys.
You have a great week.
Why get so spiritual if there's no market for it?
Great job, Mama.
I just want to make one comment. I mean, there's this... Rationalism is not authoritarian. You know, I mean, the anti-rational attitude in the New Age movement is based around the concept that if only certain things are true, and you get criticized for believing things that are not that thing, then that's somehow unfair, right? That's repressive and narrow, but that's just nonsense. I mean, what is true is what is true, and what is not true is what is not true. We may have a little difficulty with the edges between those things, and there may be true things that we just don't know about yet, but to say that it is silly and wrong and dumb to believe things that are not true is a correct statement. I mean, you can't turn around and say, well, you're repressing me, because that's right. You know, I mean, I need to hear the argument that somehow it is right and good to believe nonsense, and that's what I'm not hearing.
Right. And certainly it should be legal. That's important.
It's legal, but there's a difference. I mean, there's this whole culture of victimization, where everybody thinks that, you know, anything you do that interferes with them in the slightest way is victimizing them, and that's not true either. Because underlying all this, there is like stuff that is accurate and stuff that is not accurate. And if you're being an idiot and you're told that you're an idiot, that's not victimization, that's education.
I definitely like the libertarian point of view, and I vote libertarian, but it takes your own gumption to get up there and you have to get out there and educate yourself. You can't expect the education just to fall into you. You have to put in the effort, and there's such apathy going on right now in the American voters that it really scares me. And but that's totally sidetracked. I did want to give you several minutes here.
Oh no, I don't need much. The only thing I'll mention is that there is a point where there is so much information out there that people simply.
Right.
I mean, you cannot do it. You just cannot make the processing. And Rock wants everybody to go out there and make their own choices. But at some point, you got to hire someone to help you make choices, because you just can't know everything. You just can't do it. Why don't we?
Okay. Let's go on down to Rob. Rob.
Hey, you guys.
Good morning.
I think you guys have a good show, but I do have proof that there is a God.
All right, lay it on me. I've been waiting.
Wait just 1 second.
Uh-oh.
Hello, my children.
He's there at your house?
We're going to, hey, man. Hey, you guys. Hey, I had you go in there for a second, didn't I?
Yes.
No.
Hey, yeah, that guy was a long talker the last time. Hey, you guys do have a good show and everything, but, and I really like Mary and everything, but she called every week. Dang.
We have loyal listeners. What can I say?
Cool. That's cool. Y'all have a good show, and God bless you guys. Bye-bye.
Amen.
And maybe Santa give you whatever you want for Christmas too. Or whatever. Let's go on down to Shane. Shane?
Hey, I was calling about the product you were talking about earlier. What exactly is that?
The products?
Yeah,
well, there's a variety of products sold at the Expo that are designed to protect you. And the protection is from your TV screen emitting special radiation that's going to kill you, or just the lights in the air that are run by electric power lines. Basically, they call it low-frequency electromagnetic waves. There's a device that's designed to protect you or help amplify your quantum fields. There's a device for your morphic resonances. And these are all just twisted, extended versions of well, they're scientific words completely juxtaposed, meaninless, I can assure you.
But let me clarify something.
They're frauds.
This is Access TV, and we're not plugging any of these. These are just our informational review of the Whole Life Expo, and these are products that are being sold there right now.
So I'm not going to tell you what. I won't mention exactly.
I don't want to know what. I don't want to know what it is. I just was curious as to how it's supposed to help or whatever.
Well, the way it's supposed to help is what it does is it's the typical route of alternative medicine. I'll just give you a 5-second explanation here. They first convince you that something is terribly wrong, and then they give you something to fix that thing that they've convinced you is terribly wrong. So the thing that they tell you is that we're living in an age now where there's a lot of electromagnetic fields everywhere, and it wasn't like that when we evolved, right? You see, there were no electromagnetic fields when we evolved, even though that's not completely true. And then in order to protect you from this, we give you this thing, and now it's okay. All right, that's the scheme, and that's one of the universal schemes of alternative medicine, and it's just another example of it.
No scientific basis.
No, there's a lot of of course they'll claim scientific basis, but it's simply incorrect.
So it hasn't been proven by any scientists in Russia that we have a biomagnetic field around us.
Well, the biomagnetic. Well, there's a lot of questions about. There's a lot of very subtle issues here, but the point is that the claim that they make about what is hurting you is patently wrong, and even if it was right, the device that they're giving you has certainly nothing to do with it.
Right, so Chinese medicine doesn't work at all, right?
Well, that's a whole different thing.
No, it's not. It's actually really, really similar.
Well, it is very similar. No, it's extremely similar. Chinese medicine is a huge subject, and I would say I would just in the short time I have I will make the blanket statement that if you are sick, do not seek help from a Chinese medical practitioner.
Why?
It is because for you to sift through what they're doing is so impossibly difficult. It's just not worth your time. And plus, you know, I am among those who think that it is completely bunk from head to toe. There are those who will give you very, very long, very convincing debates how certain aspects of it are not. For example, cutting out the gallbladder of a bear to make a medicine, they agree that that's bad, but they think that ginseng is good. You know, And rock even seems to have this thing that acupuncture is actually what it claims to be, which it is not what it complains to be.
What amused me about that comment from Rock was he was just complaining about the medical establishment deciding what is real and what is not real. And what has actually happened is that acupuncture guys in the medical establishment managed to ramrod through their approval of that.
Yeah.
And it's not,
it's a long story.
It's not evidence-based.
It's a long story, but the bottom line is, if you want to be safe, stay away from Chinese medicine. And these doctors are twisted, diluted, and a lot of them are corrupt.
Well, I completely understand all you guys having your basis in thought and theory and all this. I mean, it just seems to me that for you guys to be as skeptical about a lot of things, you should also be skeptical about what has been proven by science and what man knows nowadays. It is true that we do not know a whole lot about what's going on. Everything that we know is based on theory, and it's not really proven.
No, wait. It is true that in science you never get an absolute certainty. Okay, but what science is not in the business of giving you absolute certainty. It's in the business of giving people a reasonable basis for belief. Okay. Even if it turns out that there is a flaw in some well-established theory, right, that under some weird conditions gravity does different things than we're used to it doing, okay? That's fine. They've still given us a reasonable basis to believe that gravity is going to behave a certain way within the context that we've explored it. And that's a valuable service that science is performing. Where is the reasonable basis for believing stuff that we don't have any evidential support for coming from?
How about centuries of research by Tibetan monks, years and years of exploring their own mind through meditation? They know more about their own personal mind than we'll ever know, than any Western scientist.
Well, that was their minds, wasn't it?
Well, all of our minds are the same.
Look, I know that there are people that believe in that Tibetan stuff who think that you can levitate, okay? And that could be proven scientifically. And when it is, that's the time to believe it.
Okay, one last statement. Even science has to have a little bit of faith. So even if you believe in any scientific fact, you are still subscribing to faith.
Okay, what you're doing there is you're taking the word faith and you are diluting it to the point where absolutely everything takes faith. And as soon as you do that, faith it's no longer a basis for deciding anything. Okay, if you think that for example, the idea that the sun will come up tomorrow, if you think that thousands and thousands of years of evidence that the sun comes up, and an understanding of the celestial mechanics of the Earth going around the sun and rotating and stuff, if you think all of that, even though it's not, because it is not 100% certain, because something we don't know about could stop it from happening tomorrow, that therefore it takes as much faith to believe that as it does to believe some other random thing for which we have no evidence at all, or very, very scanty evidence, then that's just silly, okay? At some point, you have to look at how much justification there is to believe a certain thing, and if there are different amounts of justification, they deserve different amounts of support.
All right.
There was something else I wanted to say.
Okay, quickly, we've got 12 minutes.
Okay, this is an atheist show, and I just wanted to get this out. Rohan was talking about these guys with their little amulet that will protect you from radio waves or whatever it was, and how they concoct a ridiculous claim about some bad thing that's happening to you and then sell you a cure for this thing that they tell you is wrong. That is exactly the basis for at least the Christian religion.
You are going to hell, but
they tell you you've got this soul. Forget the whole question of evidence. We're just telling you you've got this thing that's called the soul, and if you don't do what we tell you to do, because you've got this soul, you can go to a bad place, and we want to stop you from having that bad thing happen to you. That is exactly the same basis.
Good point. All right. Ryan.
Hello?
Quickly, we're down to 12 minutes.
All right, I'm Christian. I'm 16. I didn't go to church this morning, and I thank God for letting me be here to help you guys.
All right.
I'm very ashamed, and y'all is just bad. I mean, were y'all brought up in a Christian home?
We're bad? Wait a minute. What do you mean by bad?
And how's that helping us? Telling us we're bad.
Look, wouldn't you rather go with just go with the Bible in a good sense instead of rejecting it and trying to figure out everything in the world. You know, our mind only goes to like such a level and we can't interpret other things. You know, there is a God.
It's pretty amazing what we can do with our mind. It's unbelievable the level of understanding we have about the world around us. We have produced, in this Moore's law, we've been able to increase the speed of our little computers forever. We understand the number and scope of the galaxies. We discovered planets on other stars. We understand the biology of organisms on a fascinatingly tiny level. It is one of the wonderful things that people learn is that it's amazing that it's possible for the human mind to understand as much as it does. And a lot of theists don't really appreciate how hard that's been to do, how hard it's been to actually use science to crack so many wonderful, wonderful questions. And don't let this attitude, I mean, don't let this show give you the feeling, caller, don't let it give you the feeling that we are not absolutely mystified by the universe. It's a wonderful, fascinating subject.
No, but
we're not.
All your beliefs are just contradictory of yourselves. Okay, you sit there and you think like you're what, a libertarian?
Well,
I am.
You're a libertarian.
I'm not.
That's a separate issue. We're atheists, right?
Shame on you. But you know, the word is all the proof you need. Faith is in everything, and I can back that up with scriptures.
No, we don't have enough time.
Yeah.
Because I suggest you read the Bible with an open mind, find out all the contradictions, the history of the Bible, take it back to the Greek translation.
I know all Greek translations. I know, you know the three forms of love. I know everything that you want me to know.
At 16, you know it all.
Yes, sir.
You have a great week. Let's go on down to John here.
You don't know everything I'd like you to know.
Hello?
Quickly, John, we're out of time.
I just was wondering, I kept noticing the guy in the yellow shirt.
Yeah.
He kept saying everything had to be proved. If it's proved, then you believe it. But until then, don't.
No, he didn't say prove. I think
I may have, but
in my own personal worldview, again, I'll tell you, you present the evidence, and I make the decision. You don't have to prove anything. You give me the evidence for your conclusion.
Let the guy ask his question. Go ahead.
Well, I guess it's just like it kind of reminds me of like a long time ago when people thought the Earth was flat.
Yeah.
And then science proved that.
Right.
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of silly to only believe something?
But okay, this is a great question.
No, please let me respond to this.
Oh, yeah.
He did ask me specifically.
Yeah, because you are the guy in the yellow shirt. I have yellow on my shirt. I want to answer this.
In the days when people did not know that the Earth was round, when the only evidence they had was they could stand on a mountaintop and look around and they didn't see any curvature and they figured it was all flat, it was right for them to believe that it was flat at that time.
It only made sense.
Because what else are they going to do, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think that people can know something that they don't know. And it's ridiculous to think that they should believe something that they don't know.
Now
Rowan's turn.
A very important aspect here, caller, because you really bring up a very subtle and important question, which you answered correctly. But remember, religionists and theists, maybe those Buddhist monks and that guy was talking about, they believe unambiguously that knowledge about the physical universe can be attained through revelation, which is exactly kind of what you want. You want guys from the ancient Greek time to be able to sit down, read some revealed scripture or meditate if they're in Tibet and know that the world is round just by knowing it.
Yeah.
And we deny that that is possible. We don't believe that ever in the history of the world has an aspect of the natural world ever been revealed through revelation. It's only been revealed through scientific inquiry.
Excellent point.
Yeah, and I guess I just get the feeling that it's kind of like, I've talked to atheists before, and it's kind of like they only believe what they see. I mean, is that safe to say?
I think that's not too far.
Yeah, let's not get too picky about the word "see."
Exactly.
But
right?
sure.
I mean, stuff that there is real evidence for that is understandable. Sure, that's the stuff we believe in.
Verifiable.
Okay.
Verifiable. That's
Thank you for your call, though. That was a good question, I think.
You have a great week. Let's go on down to...
That's actually a very important, subtle issue.
It is.
Rachel.
Hi. Usually I'm at church on Sunday, but I'm sick, so I had a chance to call y'all. It's actually kind of two parts. On what base, as an atheist, how do you base the meaning of your life, or what do you base that on? And do you think that society as a whole needs to have a basic moral code to live by? And how do you avoid that? How do you avoid religion in trying to come up with a moral code?
Good question. Good question.
Always look on the bright side of life.
Well, there's a musical suggestion to answer that question.
It's your own vanity that thinks that there should be a meaning. There is no meaning. It's up to you to make the most out of your life.
I believe that's the logical end of non-belief in God, is that there is no meaning in life.
But then on to continue is, I want to be the best human being that I can, starting out with being in my family and my immediate circle of friends, and then working out towards city, state, country, to the rest of the world. So I try to affect positively the world that I have in contact with. And in the process of doing that, the moral code, I don't need religion to define that moral code.
Now remember that atheists believe that the Bible is the product of the human imagination. Okay. Just like all other written books, all other scriptures throughout all over the parts of the world, the human imagination wrote and created the Bible. And inside the Bible are all the moral codes that you're talking about.
Right.
And this is a wonderful aspect of the human imagination, that it can create this morality. However, it also creates all of the evil in the world as well. It all stems from our creative ability. And
excellent point.
So remember, atheists include the Bible in the literature of human production, of human intellectual production. And there is, the golden rule is a wonderful idea. It was not delivered by revelation. The golden rule was delivered by logic and creativity.
So that's where we part company, is that I believe that it's revealed.
Of course,
right.
Of course.
I see. So you think that it's possible for man to develop their own morality outside of a God or...
Yes, we believe it's been done. We believe it's been done.
And it's an evolutionary trait. People that get along we're social beings. So the people that get along better in the social aspect reproduce better, and so through the evolutionary trait, the moral code is just a natural aspect of us being a social being.
Now that particular perspective is open for a lot of debate, actually.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, the thing you need to understand about atheists is, we seem to be in agreement, right? You say that you see that the ultimate end of atheism is a recognition that there is no external ultimate meaning, right? But what you have to understand about atheists is, we think that human beings create the meaning, and we think that's perfectly okay. Right? So it's not like, because we're atheists, we think that we should just do whatever. Okay? We think that we are perfectly justified in creating an imposing meaning of our own, and we do that to achieve some goals of our own, and that means living in a society and getting along with other people. And so we're all in support of basic, I wouldn't say moral rules, I would say principles of behavior that lead to a functional society where we can get the things done that we want to do.
Right. And how would you resolve that when there's disagreement on what those rules should be?
Oh, that's what we have political structures for. So that now you're asking a political question, right? Yeah. Now you're asking whether or not we're libertarians or whether or not we're Democrats or
whatever advances the human being and the whole human race. So like murder, rape, theft, all those things are degrade the human level of life and everything else. So
and now I'm going to say something that my two libertarian friends here will not agree with, I think, if they think about it. Since I recognize that meaning is coming from us and that laws are coming from us, I don't personally have that much of a problem with us having laws that are relatively arbitrary and imposed by us. For example, I am not active in the anti-drug law movement. Okay, I recognize that there are going to be some things that our society decides we're just not going to have, and that may not have any basis in anything other than some kind of consensus, irrational opinion that that's bad. But I think that's as okay as us making up and imposing meaning on stuff in a general sense. Yeah, I don't really much care about that either way.
Okay, Rachel, you're going to be our last caller. I'm running out of time.
Thanks.
Thanks for calling, and hope you get better.
Thank you.
And who knows, maybe it was God's fate that you were sick today so you could watch our show. I don't know. My crew got a kick out of that one.
God is making them sick. Oh, no.
Want to invite everyone down to the Hot Jumbo Bakery down at West 5th and Lavaca. As soon as we get done here, we're all heading down that way. So if especially any callers that are still on the line that wanted to get through, you can call our voicemail. We love you all.
Bye-bye. Religion's an illness. Get over it.